My husband's new wife sent me a package 3 years after our divorce. When I saw the return address, I almost threw it away. I probably should have. Nothing good had ever come from opening things connected to Noah. At least that's what I told myself. The truth was more complicated. The truth was that I hadn't completely moved on. Not from the marriage, not from the divorce, and definitely not from the fact that Noah seemed to have recovered faster than I had. His new wife's name was Hannah. I'd met her exactly twice. The first time was at Emma's college graduation. The second was at Emma's 23rd birthday dinner. Both interactions had been polite, brief, forgettable. Hannah wasn't younger than me, wasn't prettier than me, wasn't more successful than me, which somehow made everything worse. There was no obvious reason Noah should have been happier with her. Yet he was. Everyone could see it, including me. The package arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. Medium-sized, brown cardboard. Nothing unusual. No note attached. No explanation. Just my name written in Hannah's handwriting. I stared at it on the kitchen counter for nearly an hour. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me was terrified of what might be inside. Eventually, curiosity won. It usually does. The box contained three things: a hardcover notebook, a photograph, and a sealed envelope. The photograph confused me first. It showed Noah sitting at a picnic table, smiling, holding a coffee cup. Nothing special, nothing important. At least that's what I thought. Then I noticed the date in the corner. It had been taken 6 months before he died. My stomach tightened, because Noah was dead. I should explain that part. 2 years earlier, Noah had been killed in a highway accident. One distracted driver, one rainy evening, one phone call that changed everything. Gone. Just like that. Emma was devastated. Hannah was devastated. Honestly, so was I. People always assume divorce erases love. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it just changes its shape. The notebook was stranger. Its cover had no title, no label, nothing. When I opened it, I immediately recognized Noah's handwriting. Page after page, notes, observations, random thoughts, stories, memories. The entries covered almost 5 years. Some were funny, some were thoughtful, some were heartbreaking. But one detail confused me. None of the entries seemed intended for me, or Hannah, or Emma. There was no audience, no explanation, just thoughts. Like a conversation Noah had been having with himself. I spent almost an hour reading. Then I remembered the envelope. Still sealed. Still waiting. My hands actually shook opening it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A letter. Not from Noah. From Hannah. I started reading. Claire, if you're reading this, it means I finally decided to send the notebook. I've been putting it off for almost 2 years. Not because I didn't want to. Because I wasn't sure if Noah would have wanted me to. The first sentence immediately caught my attention. Noah never told me what happened between the two of you. Not really. He said your marriage ended because both of you stopped being who you wanted to be. That was it. Nothing else. I stopped reading. Went back. Read it again. Because something felt wrong. Noah never talked about the affair. Not once. Not according to Emma. Not according to mutual friends. Apparently not according to Hannah either. I kept reading. A few months before the accident, Noah asked me to do something if anything ever happened to him. At this point, my chest felt tight. He told me there were 3 people who should receive copies of his notebooks: Emma, myself, and you. I stared at the page. Confused. Completely confused. Why me? The answer came 2 paragraphs later. Because some of the entries are about you. My stomach dropped. I flipped through the notebook again. Searching, scanning. And eventually I found them. The pages mentioning me. There weren't many. maybe 15 total, out of hundreds. But every one of them hit harder than the last. I expected anger, bitterness, regret. What I found instead was something much worse: kindness. One entry described the first apartment we'd rented after getting married. Another talked about teaching Emma how to ride a bike. Another described a camping trip we'd ruined because neither of us knew what we were doing. The memories were warm, gentle, almost affectionate, as if the divorce had never happened. And then I found an entry written 3 months after our separation. That was the one that broke me. Today, I realized something. The marriage ending doesn't erase the marriage. The bad ending doesn't cancel the good years. Claire gave me some of the happiest moments of my life. That's still true. Even now, I had to stop reading. I couldn't continue. Not immediately. Because I realized something awful. For years, I'd assumed Noah remembered me as the woman who betrayed him. The woman who left. The woman who broke his heart. Meanwhile, Noah apparently remembered the entire story. Not just the ending. The whole thing. An hour later, I finally finished Hannah's letter. The last paragraph explained everything. Noah said people spend too much time deciding whether someone was good or bad. He thought most people were both. He thought relationships were both. And he hoped that one day you'd remember the good parts without needing to defend the bad ones. I cried. Not dramatic movie crying. The quiet kind. The kind nobody sees. The kind that sneaks up on you when you're alone. A week later, I called Hannah. The first real conversation we'd ever had. For almost an hour, we talked about Noah. The things he loved. The things he hated. His ridiculous habits. His terrible jokes. The way he always ordered the same meal at restaurants. For the first time, she stopped feeling like his new wife and started feeling like someone else who missed the same person. Before we hung up, I finally asked the question that had been bothering me. Why did you send it? Hannah was quiet for a moment. Then she answered, because he would have wanted you to know. Know what? Her answer came immediately. That he forgave you years ago. The silence afterward felt enormous, because forgiveness wasn't something I'd ever asked Noah for. And somehow that made it mean more. A month later, I visited his grave. Not for closure, not for forgiveness, not even for grief. I went because there was something I needed to say. The cemetery was empty, quiet, peaceful. I sat there holding the notebook, reading a few pages, remembering. Eventually, I laughed. Because one entry described a camping trip where I'd accidentally set off a fire extinguisher inside our tent. Something I'd completely forgotten. Something Noah never had. Then I looked at the headstone and finally understood why Hannah had sent the package. The notebook wasn't about the divorce. It wasn't about the affair. It wasn't about blame. It was about memory, the complete version. Not the edited one. Not the painful one. The complete story. And maybe that's the strangest thing grief does. It teaches you that people are bigger than the worst thing they experienced. Noah wasn't just my ex-husband. He wasn't just Hannah's husband. He wasn't just Emma's father. He was all of those things. At the same time. The package arrived 3 years after the divorce and 2 years after his death. But somehow it delivered something much older. Perspective. And for the first time in a very long time, I stopped remembering Noah as the man I lost. And started remembering him as the man I was lucky enough to know.